Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. Welcome to my craft room. I couldn't help myself. I had to do another scrap project with you. Once again, while scrolling through Instagram, I saw that there was a swap in 2018 for something called fabric postage stamps. Now this really isn't a new idea. I've seen something similar, 8-10 years ago. When Valentine's Day comes around, a lot of the people that work with felt like to make little felt envelopes, and then they make their own little stamp to go with it. So it's basically that similar project, but the polka dot chair in 2018 came up with this idea on how to, they turned theirs into a pillow cushion cover. And they kind of started this whole trend for doing swaps on Instagram for these little stamps. And then I came across it. I am in the process of making a wall hanging for mine because I don't do too many pillow covers, so I thought a wall hanging would be fun. And as you can see, I have a variety of them already ready to go. I've gone ahead and I've stitched my top row down and I have all these pinned, but I want to show you how I got to this step. I've really been into collecting these baskets from the Dollar Tree. So I have a few of these. They're nice and shallow. They're not too deep. I can put one little project in them. I have everything I need for this project. I can take it off of my fancy new, well, not so fancy, bookcases, and then I can just grab this basket, and whenever I want to work on a project like this, and I'll be ready to go. Because if you've been here with me for a while, you know, first of all, that yes, I do like to talk a lot. Can't be helped. 2, I like to go crazy on a project and then I stop for a while and then I'll come back to it later. So if I want to just kind of work on a quilt for this, or if I want to work on more wall hangings or pillow covers, I'll have things in this basket. I can come back and forth to it as I want to do it. The only difference is I will be taking my tools out. So let's see what I have in my basket. The tools I used was just a simple pair of scissors. I have pinking shears because, as many of you know, I'm not sure what your stamps look like in other countries. I don't always pay attention to them when they come in the mail, but ours are all pinked around the edge. And lately our stamps come in all kinds of sizes. I get circle ones when I'm mailing a letter overseas. We have your regular 1 inch postage stamp with like the American flag on it or something. I have big large ones that have dinosaurs. They have Lucille Ball. I don't know, Blue's Clues, whatever thing they have, whatever's popular. SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo is popular right now. I saw those at the post office. So they come in all shapes and sizes is all I'm saying. When we're going through and we're making our stamps, here's 2 examples. They're both different sizes, but I have chosen to go with a square or rectangle. I wanted something to give myself the nice 90-degree angles here and the nice straight edges. I did not want to mess with trying to do a circle. First of all, they're not very popular here in the US. I don't think many people send letters overseas, so they wouldn't even be familiar with the round stamp. But everyone knows these here. It's a very recognizable shape. I used my rotary cutter to cut them out because I did want those nice straight edges. And to help do that, I have a 2.5 inch square from OmniGrid. So this is what I used. Now, none of mine are 2.5 inches, so I just wanted something small. I didn't want to put a big old 6.5, 9.5 inch ruler when I'm only cutting out these little pieces. I chose to put mine on white fabric. This is actually a sheet, brand new sheet that I just chopped off the chunk of it to use. Just so you have a bit of an idea of why I'm doing things the way we are. This is my round one. There is very little perforation around the edge. You can kind of see barely that there's a little bit. And here are my dragon stamps. All the stamps that we get here in the US that I've seen have a perforated edge around it. So similar to like the pinking shears. You see how the edge is like pink all the way around? They used to come on a roll. Well, you can still get some of them on a roll, but anyways, they came on a roll and you tear them off, and this is where it was perforated to make it easier to tear. So that's why we're putting the white fabric on the back and we're pinking around it. So you can just use some scrap white fabric you want. You can use any color you wish. I've seen some on Instagram where they used more of a light blue, and I've seen some pinks and greens. It's all up to you on what you're going to do with your project. But if you were joining this like swap that they were doing, they were all putting it onto a white fabric. That way there would be a nice white frame around all of the stamps, and they would all look the same even though the centers would be different. So I have my white fabric. And I also have my glue pen that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. They were 3 in a pack for $1. Because when we're putting them down onto our white fabric, we're just going to put a little dab of glue. You can use a glue stick. If you prefer to use a fusible, you can use a fusible underneath there. I know they have like the Misty Fuse or something that comes on a roll to hem your pants. That would work below there. But I just put a small dot of glue. This will come out when it washes. I can feel it in there a little bit, but it's not going to be anywhere that is going to affect what I plan on doing with it. So a washable glue, or they have special glue that you can buy that comes in a pen for sewing, like when you're going to glue down your hexagon papers and stuff like that. Glue sticks, whatever you like. If you don't want to use a glue at all and you don't have the fusible, you can just kind of hold it and hope everything works for the best. I'm not very good at holding and hoping everything works for the best. But in here, I picked through my stash and I found some different novelty fabrics. I found just some fun. This is actually a piece of a flannel. Just some things that had fun designs on them. I want to have things that are at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches in size so that I can go ahead and choose designs. I did find some larger ones with the owls, but I chose not to use these right now because I thought they might be a little bit too big. They are, if I were to use them, then just the owl itself would be 2 inches and then add about 1/4 inch on each side. I have the cats. I have this Halloween piece of scraps that already has a frame around it. So once again, these are larger pieces. So whatever you happen to have in your stash that has little small pieces that you can fussy cut. On this one, I can choose to use the flower or the owls. If you want to work on a project like this and you don't have anything, you can go to Joann's and just look through some of their novelty fabrics. Once again, I have frames already around the Ninja Turtles if I chose to do those. Some kids' little vehicles from a little kids' fabric. I have sports, butterflies. So there's everything, chicken, whatever you might happen to have. If you do any type, these are all from an I Spy swap that I did many years ago. So I could easily cut out designs from these. These are stamps, so I could put stamps on a stamp. I don't have a problem doing that. I thought that was cute. But you can go to Joann's and you can just go ahead and pick up 1/8 of a yard. Joann's, I know my Joann's lets me cut anything over, I think they told me the bare minimum was 3 inches or 4 inches. So you can just go and have just a little section cut off of a variety of fabrics. And it doesn't cost very much that way. Here's a fabric that has all these different types of little stripes and borders, so I could use large elephants, stars, and I did pick one with some small elephants, as you can see right there. So just look through your stash, look through your scraps that you already have cut out. I went into my 2 inch, 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch, 5 inch bin, and I went through and I dug through all of those to find different pieces of fabrics. I got really lucky in my 3.5 inch strip bin. I also had some charm squares that I was able to go through, and they were all from a set, so while these are a little bit different, they do still match. So I have some of these that I cut out. Great way to use up little pieces, and then also another good reason to head out to a fabric store and purchase some new stuff. Let me show you how easy it is to go ahead and just cut out a little motif to use for your stamps. Now I have a small 28 milliliter rotary cutter that I could use for cutting around here, but I found that I'm just so used to using this big one and feeling this in my hand that I had a problem staying right up against a ruler with this one. I kept kind of veering off, but you might find it useful to use a smaller one like this. So let's say I decided I want to do this little football here. I would place my ruler on here and I would give myself a little bit of space around it, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. I want to have a small border around this. Similar to this butterfly, I don't need to cut really close up to the edges. I just gave myself just a little bit of space. Because remember, we are going to border it with the white fabric, and that'll add a nice little border to it. So we don't need to have this actual piece that we're fussy cutting out be too large. Just put my ruler on here. I kind of, maybe I'll find a little bit, 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I'll find the center depending on the piece I'm doing. I just went ahead. If you have one of those rotating mats, it would be good for this. Now you could go all the way past if you wanted to. That would separate my two balls over here, so that wouldn't be a problem. But if I had other pieces, other pictures over here, I wouldn't want to just slice through it if I could use them for another little stamp. But like this ball has already been cut up, so if I had to cut through it somehow for whatever reason, if I cut through that, that wouldn't be a problem because I'm not going to use that piece anyway. Then I take those two edges that I cut, I would line my ruler up again, figure out where I might want it. I like to line my lines up here just as if you were squaring up something, because I want my piece to have those 90-degree angles. So I'm not going to go and put my ruler on crooked and cut it that way. So I'm going to find a spot to line it up at the bottom and on the side, and that way I can just go ahead and trim. And I don't think I trimmed very well on this side. So I'll just lay it back down and I'll go ahead and just square that up a little bit. And now I have that piece that is ready to become a stamp. But before I put any of this fabric away, I may as well just go ahead and cut these out too. Same process, just give yourself just a small little border. You could do this with scissors, but you're not going to get that, well, I wouldn't be able to get those nice 90-degree angles. Now this, of course, will be a smaller stamp, and that's okay because I like to have the mixture of the smaller stamps with the larger stamps. So as you can see, something like this, you can just go ahead, chop off a side, and then just keep working your way around. However fussy cutting works for you. If you don't have this small of a ruler, you can go ahead and just use your larger ruler. It does take a little bit more to hold on to it because you're holding on to a big ruler for this little 1.5-inch piece. And then take care of these in any way that you would with all of your scraps. So now I have these 3 ready to become stamps. Now when I ironed my fabric, I went ahead and put some starch on it just to make it nice and stiff. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, but I just kind of felt when I'm using a sheet like this, sheets tend to wrinkle, and it's a lot easier if you use some type of starch to get those wrinkles out and spritz them down and all that, because a lot of times when sheets come out of a package, they're very, very wrinkled. So then I would just take my little glue stick, my glue pen, and I just put a little dab right in the center. It doesn't need to be much, it just needs to hold your little stamp in place. Now the first one's not too bad. You want to leave at least 1/4 inch around all edges. But when you go to put the next one, you remember you're going to have to cut between the 2 of them. So your next stamp should be at least 1/2 inch over. I eyeball it. Put my little dab of glue. Now I know there is going to be some waste. I have these already glued down. I do have some waste in here, but I will probably be able to save this piece to put another stamp on. These I'm going to lose some through there. So I might not want to use my best, highest quality white fabric for this project. That's why the sheet works out really well. I could decide to put this one up here. Then I would just keep working my way through whatever ones I cut out. Once again, leaving yourself 1/4 inch on the edges and 1/2 inch from anything you've already stitched. Then I let this sit and dry. You could go ahead and press it and it would set your glue. But if you're going to make a bunch of them, by the time you get to this end, this side has already been glued. I mean, the glue has already been dried. So as you see, it's not too much. It's not a hard process for this. Another project that would be fun for the little kids, they could either glue it down to the fabric for you. They can choose the fabric that you cut out, and then you could do all of this extra work. And then when you get to the point that you're actually making a project, they can help you lay the different pieces down and find the pattern that they like. Okay, so that's enough gluing. Let's move on to how we are going to turn these into stamps. Just going to set that in my basket so it'll be there for me when I'm ready later. I worked on these this morning so they are nice and dry. If you are pretty good with your rotary cutter, you can go ahead and just cut down. Since mine are all different shapes, I can't easily just kind of cut straight lines and figure it out that way. So I'll just go ahead and take my scissors. And I'll cut between these. Maybe I'll go up a little bit this way, cut between those. And then I can just cut out each individual section, make sure I'm leaving enough space on each side, splitting whatever difference I gave myself, so that when I go ahead and pink them, that there'll be plenty of space to pink. If you have older children, they might actually enjoy doing something like this, 8 or 10, 12, 14-year-olds. Some kids are very creative and they like to play with things like this, so this may be very interesting to them. Now I made these and I tried to go about 1/4 of an inch away from the edges. And then when I laid them down here and I started stitching them, I realized that's probably a little bit more white than I expected. I might be able to lift these up and pink them again, but I think I'm just going to head and say that these are going to have a larger frame on them. And when I make this next batch, I'm going to make them with a narrower frame. So I'm going to take my pink and shears. Now pink and shears are a little bit tighter because you have all of these little mountains here that have to go together, so they do take a little bit more effort to use. They have a rotary blade that has a pinking shear on the blade itself, so you could always put your little square up to it, measure exactly away from the edge 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, whether you want it to be narrow or thicker, and then cut it with the rotary cutter. That would go nice and quick also, and you can guarantee that all of your edges are going to be the same distance from your piece. I'm not too worried about that, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. I'm going to take my pink and shear and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a border, and then I'm just going to cut it off. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. That's it. You've got yourself a little fabric postage stamp. Now that wasn't hard at all, was it? There are so many fun novelty fabrics out there. You could do one all in bugs. You can do it all in food items. A little trip through Joann's. Even if you're saying Joann's is not the best quality for quilts, if you're just going to have a little fun like these, if you want to do a swap with friends, or you just want to make some small projects with these, then I think Joann's fabric is perfectly fine, and they have a nice variety. Quilt shops do also have a great variety of novelty fabrics. I just tend to see a lot at Joann's. I actually got this bald eagle off of a Marine Corps fabric. So if you want to do a quilt all with animals or all with birds, a pillow, a tote bag. As I said, I decided to put mine on a wall hanging. I have this bleachy looking blue fabric that has like water stains all over it. I really like this fabric, so I cut out 2 of these. This happens to be 15.5 inches. I put my 12.5 inch ruler down on it because that's generally when you make a pillow form, they're about 12.5 inches or so, and I thought, well, that looked a little small, so I went ahead and cut larger around it, and I found that 15.5 inches looks pretty good. You can make pillows at any size. They do have pillow forms in a variety of sizes, or you can make your own. So once you decide what you're going to do with your stamps, now right now they are just with that one little dot of glue being held onto here. So if you're swapping them, you might want to put them in a safe place afterwards and not hand them a lot. The glue will stay for a while. I'm not sure exactly how long. But if you want to do, let's say we all decide, hey, we're going to do a swap, right? And one person is going to make all sports related like football. If you were to go to Joann's and get this fabric and it had a nice piece where you can cut 5 inches off and get a whole bunch of footballs, you might want to go ahead and put fusible down through that whole length and then start cutting out each individual football. And when you fuse it onto here, then you know it's going to stay. But the ladies that were doing the swap on Instagram, they all seemed to be fine with just having that little dab of glue. It went through the mail perfectly, no problem. No one had any issues with them coming unstuck. If you're doing this just for yourself, you might want to put the fusible on the back of the white so that when you're ready to put it on your project, you can fuse it in place. But for me, I just went ahead and stuck a pin in the top of it. Even though this is a dark fabric, I went ahead and used my white thread on there. I wasn't going to change out thread for each different stamp that I put on. I just put a little bit of a border around, almost like when you're top stitching, it's a little about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit more. You just want to hold this down. And as I said, this stamp part is loose. It is not stitched down at all, and that's going to be perfectly fine. You went ahead and pinked it, so it really shouldn't do too much fraying at all. And since you have a decent sized border, even when you have it on a narrower border, any type of fraying that may occur is not going to be a problem, because with the pinked edge, it's going to be all right. And if it does fray, everything is already stitched down and held into place, so you do not have to worry about it. I have quilted, just put some cotton batting on the back of this, and as you can see, I just took a matching blue thread and I just did a whole bunch of straight line stitching on it. I kind of liked the look of that in the background. I did all of my quilting first before I put these on, because I wanted to have that textured look on the background. If you don't want to do that ahead of time, you don't want to spend that time, you don't want to use the thread, you're just making a small project, you're making a little bag or something, you can go ahead and as you're stitching these down, this will actually quilt your project for you. With the cotton batting I use, I know I only have to quilt it 10 inches apart, and the batting will actually stay together and I won't have any bunching or problems like that. But as a wall hanging, it's really not going to matter too much. If you choose to use polyester, you might have to do some stitching on it first to make sure none of it will move, because even on a wall hanging, you do have to wash them occasionally. So then as I'm going through, I'm just stitching. I start down away from my pin, I start stitching around, I pull my pin out and I put it on, stick it off to the side, and it stays down nicely. You can use a glue stick to hold these down, anything that works for you. But for such a small project like this, I found that this works out fine. You can do this on a larger quilt. I probably would use the fusible on the back of these to make sure it stayed in place until I was done, or I would use safety pins instead of straight pins. You can do this quilt as you go on your backing like this, have a whole bunch of different colors, they're all the same. You're going to have each block, you can have this one be animals, the next one be food, this one you only put green fabrics on it. As I showed, some of this fabric is really more about a color and a design more than, I mean this does have leaves, but polka dot's not actually a thing. This one has wiggly lines, so you could say that you wanted to have your blue background and you want to do all green or all red on top. Me, I didn't mind. I've got bugs and tractors and fishes and hearts and purses and a little Harry Potter. So everything works together for me. Scrappy. If it's scrappy enough, it all works. At least that's the way I'm thinking. I like the way that the white, where you pink it in the background, that brings them all together so that no matter what I did do to these, they all work really well. If you wanted to use these on a white background, you might want to choose a different color that you're going to put your fabric on and pink. That way it would pop off of your white. But really, the sky's the limit with these. It's all about your creativity and what you can come up with. So dig through your stash, find some of your novelty fabrics, go ahead and make some postage stamps, and then see what you can do with them afterwards. Have fun. Bye.